Hello, welcome to the show, everybody. I'm your host, Jack Canfield, and my guest today is Kiva Schuler. And Kiva is a founder of the Jai Institute for Parenting, which has been certifying peaceful parenting coaches for over a decade. And Kiva is on a mission to support parents to discover a modern and more informed approach to parenting, leaving behind the traditional discipline and punishing practices of the past. And her work is really incredible. I'm really glad to have her here to join us today. So welcome to the show, Kiva.
Thank you so much for having me, Jack. It's truly an honor to get to be here with you.
Thank you. Well, I'm very excited to have you here today because I think your work, as I said before, is really, really important work. So let's start talking about what you think is wrong with traditional parenting practices.
I think that, I'd love to transcend conversations of right and wrong. These practices, disciplining children, punishing them, are as old as humanity in many ways, and they can be effective in terms of getting short-term compliance or having children follow rules. I think as we've evolved, we can look at a bigger, broader conversation of what's best in preserving the self-esteem, the confidence, the long-term relationship between parents and children. We have so much more information now about brain science, psychological development, nervous system science, emotional intelligence. And so I think this is more of an evolution than a departure, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. We know so much more about the brain and emotions and how we learn and all that good stuff. So I'm glad you're doing that. So based on that, what suggestions do you have for people who want more connection with their kids without compromising their role as a parent?
I think it's really important for us to acknowledge the cost, if you will, of continuing to use these traditional parenting practices to get children to behave. It's a brave, bold act to depart the status quo, right? To leave behind the way it's always been done or the way other people are doing it. But if you really look at your child and notice your own feelings when you're losing your temper or yelling or, threatening or bribing, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good in our bodies and it doesn't feel good to our child. And so I think that first point is really just one of awareness, like, maybe there's a different way. And then starting to educate yourself on what we now know, which is that there are highly effective parenting tools, strategies, and practices that do not require us to cause harm to this little being that we're here to love the most.
So I'm just curious, what are some of those practices? If you could just give us a few so we get a sense of it.
In the big picture, what we want to look at is replacing punishments, consequences, really any sort of manipulative act to get a child to change their behavior with connection, communication, leading to cooperation. So children are actually really smart. They very much want to experience love and harmony in the home too. They just have needs and feelings and desires that are very important to them, just like we do. And so when we learn to regulate our own nervous system, to feel our feelings without creating shame or blame or guilt in our child, to name them, and then to get curious about that child's worldview, right? What's going on for them in that moment? We can then help them regulate their nervous system. And from there, we can come up with solutions together. So that might sound something like the story I always tell is when my kids were really little, they're teenagers now, but we were in the car, it was traffic, they were bickering, it was escalating, my stress was going through the roof. I'm not really a yeller, so when I do yell, they cry, I cry, everybody cries. So that happened. And we came back to connection. And my son, he was probably 6 at the time, said, "Mommy, I really don't like it when you yell at me." And I said, "I know, Miles, I really don't like it either." And he said, "Well, could we figure out something different? Because this is a, process that we have in our family." And I said, "Yeah, what ideas do you have?" And he said, "Well, how about the next time you feel yelling coming up in your body, you say, 'Hey guys, I'm feeling yelling coming up in my body.' And then we'll know." And I have to tell you, they're 16 now and we still say that in our family. It's kind of a joke, but it's really just being aware that all of these needs and feelings of everyone in the family system are valid and real.
I'm just curious. I'm going to put you on the spot here. So let's say I'm in the kitchen, I'm cooking dinner, And my kid's been watching video games for the last 90 minutes. And I say, hey, Riley, could you help set the table? And she doesn't respond. And I ask her again, and she doesn't respond. I ask her again. Maybe she starts arguing with me.
Yeah.
What would you do in that situation right there?
Yeah. So the first thing, just make sure everything's off on the stove so that there's no fires that get set. What we want to do is put ourselves in our child's world. So if that were happening, and that has happened in my house for sure, I would go over, gently place my hand on my this would be my son, if it was video games, on my son's shoulder and say, hey, what's going on? And he would say, I'm just in the middle of this and I need 5 more minutes. And I would say, I can agree to 5 more minutes. And then the computer is going off. Agreed? And I'll say, agreed. Right? So it's not what we want to get in front of is sort of the power over mechanism of because I said so, and expecting this other human to jump because we say jump. When we look at the long-term consequences of developing that kind of reactivity in someone who's going to be adult. Well, who's going to be saying jump 5 years from now? Is it the peer at a party who wants them to try an illegal substance? Is it a partner who wants them to, go farther than they want to go? Is it a boss who's out of integrity? And so actually what we want to do is teach the future leaders that we're raising to voice their needs and to come into cooperation of the whole family unit.
That's really good. I know that from my wife, she's learned that because I'm like one of these very focused people. And if she'll put her hand on my shoulder and get my attention, then I know I stop, I look,
Yeah.
And I never thought about doing that with the kids as well. This is really good. And
it really works. It's about connection, right? How can we get in their world? How can we connect? If we're triggered, if we're reactive, that's not actually our child's responsibility. Our emotions are not theirs to carry. And so we get to learn the skills of calming ourselves down first and then exhibiting curiosity or empathy, right? What's happening for this child and how can I help them move forward in a positive direction?
Well, I like that too. You came to an agreement and then now they have an agreement, 5 minutes,
right,
which is not going to change the world all that much. That's good. Thank you for that. So I'm curious, you've been doing this work for a long time now. What do you feel like you know now that, that maybe you didn't know 10 years ago?
I mean, it's funny because I'm at the end of my, having my kids live with me, part of my parenting journey. And I say to them all the time, I'm like, can I have a do-over? Can I go back? What I've learned is that it's okay to make mistakes. There is not a perfect parent in the world. And I think in my family, certainly, and I see this with all of our coaches, I hear this stories all the time. It's the breaches, right? It's the moments of hurting each other unconsciously and then making that okay, asking for forgiveness, creating new pathways forward that deepen and strengthen relationships. And so I think what I know now is that it's okay to make mistakes. Anything can be fixed. It's never too late. Connection is always possible. And the kids are amazing. Like just trusting them to find their path and do the right thing is probably the biggest gift that I've given my children as a mom.
I love too the thing you said about, when you asked your son, like, what should we do when mom's about to yell, and they always have a solution. They come up with something. They're very creative. And I know I've used that technique sometimes in my family with my kids, also with my wife, and because these apply really to any human being. As one person once said, adults are just big kids in suits.
That's right. I mean, parents are leaders. And I know you talk a lot about new leadership. This new evolution of leadership isn't about having the answers. It's about listening. It's about holding what you think you know back and letting others in the room have a voice. And that's not different in modern parenting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What, you talk about being able to make mistakes, to forgive yourself. I'm wondering if you find this, because I know you're training coaches to do this work. And I know I used to do self-esteem workshops for schools. And then I do a parenting thing in the evening on self-esteem for children. And people would often feel really bad when they learned all these things they could have been doing different. And maybe they think that, well, I've been really screwing up my kid. And I always would tell them, look, celebrate that you now know you don't have to do that anymore. Don't beat yourself up for what you've already done. Would you agree with that? Is that how you frame it as well?
Yeah, I mean, parenting guilt is real. And I think especially, we train hundreds of coaches every year, and they are often confronted with what you just actually said, like, oh, I hurt my kid. I used to want to really protect people from that, but I think that there's something really potent and valuable in it, because if we really let ourselves feel that and feel how that impacted us when we were children, then we're more motivated to learn these new skills, to stick with it, to be consistent. When others judge our parenting, which they inevitably will, right? When you're parenting peacefully, people are going to have opinions about that. And so feeling that honest truth, right? That resounding like, oof, kind of gives you the gravitas to say no more. We're going to do it differently going forward.
Oh, that's good. I like that. Well, I'm sure a lot of our viewers want to know more about this. Where can they go to learn more?
There's so much information about peaceful parenting, about becoming a certified parenting coach at our website, which is at www.JAI-instituteforparenting.com. JAI is J-A-I.
I looked up JAI on the internet the other night. I think it stands like victory or success.
That's right. Victory in the name of good.
Victory in the name of good. Very good. I love it. Okay. So say the website one more time.
JAI-instituteforparenting.com.
Very good. Well, I love what you're doing. I think it's so valuable, so important. Thanks for joining us today, Kiva.
Thanks for having me, Jack.
All right. And thanks to all of you for watching, for joining us today. And please tune again next week, where I'll have another person I'll be interviewing that's an important thought leader. And until then, if you're a parent, please make sure to go to Kiva's website and learn more about how you can become a less stressed, more effective, and more peaceful parent. Until then, next week, have a great life. And, slow down, tune in, be a little more present for your kids. I think it's, however, I have kids that are 45 and I have a grandson who's 8, and it applies to all levels. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Love you guys. See you next week.